Gentlemen, we've survived until 2021. We just did the future state reviews, but now it's time for, the normal shebang, the normal show, if we will. It's episode 48 of Krackle Comics Reviews. In 2021, it's our first show after our hiatus. And I'm treating this as our actual first show. So, how do we feel? We're in the new year, gentlemen. I'm Mike.
I'm Dan.
And new year, new me. You can now refer to me as Richard.
Are you going to change your name?
No. I'm Vincent.
Okay. I was that a reference to something? I don't know anymore.
I could call him Dick then.
No, it would be Rich. My nickname officially would be Rich.
For Nova?
For Richard.
I'm just trying to pull out something. Hopefully the break was good for you. We took 2 weeks off. It was weird not having to do a show for 2 weeks, but now we're back and now doing 2 shows a week. I don't know how that happened, but we do have a lot of books. There are big releases this week, and also we'll kick it off with Dan with a book that's just weekly now. It's every week this book comes out. Amazing Spider-Man.
Yep, Marvel's milking the Spider-Man cow. So, okay, whoa. When did you guys decide to join me? You're muted, buddy. What? All right, back to me? Okay. Our first issue to kick off this new show in this not-so-normal year. What is going on? Okay. I guess I'll just keep doing this while this is happening. Our first issue to kick off the show is Amazing Spider-Man number 56, written by Nick Spencer, art by Mark Bagley, inks by John Dell and Andrew Hennessy. We start with a slight flashback as Kingpin and Norman Osborn agree to team up to take down Kindred, who we all know at this point is Harry Osborn. Wow, I really blanked on the name there. We then pan slightly before modern day, where the Green Goblin is face to face with Kindred. Kingpin utilizes a captured villain named Spot, I believe, to capture Kindred and transport him to Ravencroft. So that's kind of where he's being held right now. Obviously, Norman is running Ravencroft at this point. And before Kingpin, breaking news, guys, Kindred is Harry Osborn. You heard it here first. So before Kingpin interrogates him, Norman steps in and has a private word with his son, to which we get another flashback from a day earlier where we see the fight that got Kindred captured in the first place. We then veer off into some random stuff going on with the escaped Ravencroft convicts and Aunt May and the feast thing that she's doing. And then we go back to how Kingpin deceived Norman by capturing Kindred. And just as Norman continues to talk to his captured son, Spider-Man shows up at Ravencroft demanding to talk to Norman. And that's where our issue ends. So aside from that slight detour, towards the last third of the issue, I thought this was okay. Obviously, not a lot of action really happening in this issue, just a lot of reflection and some deep discussions really going on between Norman and Harry. Obviously, this has kind of been the opposite way for a lot of the main stories, like Harry kind of talking to his father. But for this story in particular, we're kind of getting the opposite, which is interesting, I guess, to see. And obviously having Kingpin in here is also a cool kind of dynamic as well. But I like this. I thought it was okay. Mark Bagley, it's pretty much the same of what you expect from him at this point in his career. Not too bad, just I guess serviceable. I don't know, Mike. Anything else?
It's Mark Bagley with 2 inkers, so do with that information what you will. It's been 2 issues of straight talking. Issue 55. Harry's reasoning is still petty, reasons for you took my girlfriend from college. So really, it does demean his death in an Amazing Spider-Man 200, Spectacular Spider-Man 200, but also bring him back in one more day also did that. So, but he wants to prove to Pete. his whole goal was to hurt Pete to prove, or just I guess make him remember one more day, because the big takeaway is that Pete doesn't remember it, but MJ does, and MJ played actor for Norman, so Norman could get to his son, since he's still absolved from the sins. You missed on the part where everyone else is getting like their sins back, but gonna try to be good people now, I guess. But Norman hasn't come back to him. It looks like he's permanently switched to good guy. So we'll see how Pete and Norman handle that at the end of there here. And there is a kind of an emotional thing with because Harry's strung up in that mental box that Spot creates, and he's like, "Why are you doing this to me?" So that's a thing here. But like, I just want to know everything. Like, are you gonna undo one more day at this point or not? And can we get a consistent artist on this book in 2021? That'd be nice too. Like, don't make it weekly. I think this coming out weekly hurt it because so little happened issue to issue that it didn't really do anything making it weekly. It just felt more bloated. So I think I'm excited. It looks like we're going to deviate a little bit. The spots, I did like seeing the spot, but Mr. Negative's back, Martin Lee's back with Aunt May. That'll be interesting to see what we do there. I anticipate the next issue is just Spidey fighting, or I guess maybe it's the next one. There's one on the cover where he's fighting Mr. Negative, and then there's that one upcoming one where it's Pete and MJ's faces in a heart. So maybe the proposal happens there. I don't know. But this is it's still a good comic book. We didn't do a top 10 list show, but I did, for my own sake, write a top 10 list. And this was number 10 on my books for the year. I think it squeezed in just barely in that 10 spot, but it's still a solid comic book. I still enjoy this run, but I would like to see things start, taking form and, shape here. But I digress.
Yep, over in crossover number 3 by Donny Cates and Jeff Shaw, we open with direct references to Watchmen and giant squids, which is kind of connected to the idea of the dome in this book. And then we're drip fed a little bit more of Ellie's backstory and how her parents, were caught in the dome and how she escaped. While in the present, she's putting makeup on Ava to hide her Ben-Day dots on her skin, essentially. They can't address the hair unless they go find a wig, but pretty convincing little undercover treatment. And the other kid who threw the Molotov into the comic shop, he runs right into them as they're heading to, try and help Ava. And obviously, at first, Ellie is like, "What the hell? You almost killed me," blah, blah. But then they kind of get an uneasy alliance when she learns more about, that the kid was forced to do it by his dad and blah, blah. And also, like, a cop walks up on them. So they kind of just are stuck together now. And suddenly, in the middle of the highway, there's a giant Gundam punching a giant squid. But it turns out that it is an illusion set up by Dr. Black, I believe, or something black, but with a Q in it, because he's a Doctor Strange analog, and in fact, initially he's mistaken for Doctor Strange, but he is a member of the Paybacks, which is an actual comic book published by Dark Horse and then later by Heavy Metal, granted written by Donny Cates in 2015. So I can almost assure you that this issue drove up prices on that series, as well as the trade, which gets a footnote here, which again is kind of weird because it's a trade published by Dark Horse, not Image Comics, kind of technically advertising for the competitor. But then the mic drop moment here when our whole little crew here, Otto, Ellie, Ava, and darn it, I forget the guy's name, but they're now with the Paybacks, and it turns out that the Paybacks are being led by Madman, Mike Allred's classic independent creation. And to me, it's not 100% clear whether the character that Ava drew on a piece of paper is Madman in actuality, or if Madman is mistaking himself for the character in the drawing, or blah, 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 blah. Because obviously the drawing originally looked like Superman. And we also are pretty certainly know that Superman is not going to show up on the page in this series. But seeing Madman, definitely pretty awesome. This was another great issue with all the carrot on the sticks that I crave, all the references, all the feel-good meta stuff. And now I'm probably going to try and track down Paybacks, but I don't know if I'll be able to find it affordably right now.
Yeah, I think here's the deal. We talked about issue 1, issue 2. It definitely seemed that Donny Cates has more leeway than others when with his idea on this, and here it is taking form in that little way of here. And then also, Madman was originally published by Dark Horse as well, so that's another interesting. So two Dark Horse things in an Image book is very interesting to see. Jeff Shaw's Madman, by the way, looks fantastic. The kaiju fight also looked fantastic. The whole issue looks great, but just highlight the Jeff Shaw marks there. Yeah, this continues to be the most fun comic out there for anyone right now. I implore Dan, go read Crossover, go catch up on Crossover. It's that good, because we want to hear your thoughts on it. We're going to keep pushing that towards them eventually, and we'll see if we can get them to read it. But no, this is great. I kind of have the idea in my head how they get Superman to appear. Technically, if you have a guy with a blue suit from the back with black hair, that could be anyone. So I think if they do it, that's the way they're going to have to do it. And then, you just put a couple lines in there and color them in for red, and there's the cape. But I am very interested to see how they handle this going on. But, it becomes, it's like you said, it's still the meta and fun of the entire thing going forward. So I'm very excited to see where it goes. And then, total mark out moment when Madman walks out. Because, totally didn't expect that. So, I'll take us to the conclusion of Dark Knight's Death Metal. It's finally over. It's finally over. Scott Snyder, Greg Capullo, Jonathan Lepion, and then other art here at the end by Yannick Paquette and Brian Hitch. This was Yannick Paquette's final week at DC this week. He gave a nice statement. He's leaving DC after 10 years. So the big fight's going down, and Batman Who Laughs is like, hey, you can't win to Wonder Woman. So anyway, let's make a deal. And with that, I'll destroy the hands of reality and remake the Earth in the multiverse. And Wonder Woman has to decide, do I side with the big evil guy or go against him? And she goes against him by shoving him into the end of the universe. And for being good, she gets rewarded by the hands of fate or reality, a new universe, multiverse, where people can come back. And it's stated that everything that ever happened and whatnot, though people can come back and, hyper time's been reinstalled, so people will remember things, slowly over time. The cost is that Diana gives her life for this to happen. So Wonder Woman, as we know her, is now in the great beyond, I guess. The epilogue here is the heroes celebrating, and Barry takes Wally to the totality to introduce him to the new kind of crew of people overseeing it, and it's heroes and villains working together. So Martian Manhunter, Mr. Terrific, Hawkgirl, Talia al Ghul, and Vandal Savage, Lex Luthor. And I guess they're putting Wally on that team. It seemed that would be the takeaway here. They show that the multiverse has been reborn, but it has multiverses inside it. So now it's called an omniverse, giving way to an infinite frontier, which is what the new, the relaunched. I'm going to call it a reboot because it's a reboot. The new rebooted line for DC is going to, have that infinite frontier moniker on it. And, the prime DC Earth is no longer the center of, that multiversity map, which, Grant Morrison created for multiversity. They're still using that here as their guide. But there's a new planet next to it, which for now they've dubbed the Elseworld. So close out on Earth Zero in 1943 with the JSA teaming up with Sergeant Rock after Hawkman finds Sergeant Rock writing in his journal. That scene doesn't truly make sense to me because I don't really think a lot of the JSA got involved directly in World War II. I'm not going to go into it, but oh man, was this whole event was a mess, just a total mess. Endless, 80-page one-shots of things that were happening in between pages, in between issues. You're gonna have to have an omnibus to try to read all this, but I think it's a scatterbrained event that, I see a lot of comments saying this just did what, Doomsday Clock originally intended to do, but worse. Having not read Doomsday Clock, I can't comment on that. But yeah, it went too long. It's more bloated than anything I've ever seen, and more scatterbrained, and it felt directionless a lot of the time. Um, so yeah, I'm happy it's over. I'm more looking forward to Infinite Frontier, but of course we have to get through Future State to get to that. But even more so, like the future of DC, like I'm not really excited inherently because as we're seeing the plans of this AT&T Time Warner, it just I don't get excited for anything that they're going to try to do under this regime here of also that, but I'm removing people as well. Another round of third DC cuts and layoffs happen. So like I don't know. It's hard for me to get excited by DC in any shape or form in early 2021. Maybe that'll change. But yeah, the event's over, and a whimper and not a hit is the way kind of I expected to go back from issue 1, and was only reading this to see what the new layout was going to be. And yeah, this was definitely a DC event. And Scott Snyder teases he's got an Image book coming out, but he also teases big plans for DC down the road. Whoever knows what that means. We thought he was taking a break from superheroes for a little bit, but I'll digress. Death Metal's over. I didn't enjoy it. I'm happy it's done.
Yeah, I didn't read Death Metal, but the ending, without further clarity, which I'm sure is what Infinite Frontier is going to be about, it doesn't actually like really address or solve things. It's like, ooh, hyper time, but like, okay, all the stories mattered, but in what sense? For example, like, some of the major sticking points, like the Titans, yeah, a lot of the characters technically have existed in this new continuity, mostly through appearances in Death Metal tie-ins. Like I read that anthology that had a Titan story with most eras of the Titans, but like, did that stuff actually happen? That it happened. That story is in continuity, but is it in the continuity? Whatever, it doesn't matter. And I don't think DC cares whether it matters. But in Eternals #1 by Kieran Gillen, Assad Rivik, art by Matt Wilson, colors by Wilson. So Marvel is trying real hard to make Eternals a thing before this movie comes up. They're putting at least a good foot forward with the creative team here, with Rivik here, and also some text/map pages, and even honestly some of the writing style. There is a little bit of a Hickman vibe here, and there's also parallels specifically to Dawn of X because the Eternals, and I think this is ongoing existing lore, but they have similar systems. Like they basically have resurrections, and they have like a save state. Like if you die, we're going to reset you to this point. So Sprite is brought back, and Icarus kind of helps her get back in the groove of things, and he's our focal character. So they're tagging along together. And she essentially runs away because she's like, oh, I'm resurrected. Let me go explore and stuff. So she goes to check out on Earth and the humans because she's been dead since, or at least the last time she was, save stated or whatever. When they've decided to reboot her memory, at that point, humans were like very primitive. So she's all impressed by cars and everything like that. And Iron Man runs into them, and a reference is made to Icarus's last major events in Jason Aaron's first Avengers arc. And Iron Man also he alludes to the fact that he wants to bang Cersei. Not literally, but yeah, actually kind of. But it's funny because in universe, by the Eternals, this is essentially referred to as an Eternals reboot. And, that's essentially, Marvel very, very, very rarely does full reboots. It's not like DC, which I was just moaning about a second ago. But obviously Marvel is, positioning this as this is the new take on the Eternals. You can jump in straight here, everything like that. But there's also fun reference to kind of the overall Eternals lore about how they're like mistaken for Greek gods. And that's a whole mix up that has to do with the fact that Kirby never intended Eternals to be canon. Like in the original series, Marvel was like, we need you to connect to the Marvel Universe somehow. So Kirby's like, all right, I'll have them fight the Hulk. But actually, it's a Hulk robot. It's kind of silly. So then they run across a deviant in the sewers and fight it. And then Zuras, who's like the leader of the Eternals, he has been assassinated as they show back up to Olympia. And Icarus and Sprite are somehow suspects because Sprite has only been brought back alive after she was up to some shenanigans the last time she was alive, and obviously Icarus has been with her. But they run away to try and figure things out by themselves, and Thanos shows up at the very end, as you'd expect from a giant reboot attempt of the Eternals. And again, kind of Hickman vibes with Rivik and Thanos, obviously going back to Secret Wars and stuff. This was decent. I thought the narration of the machine is a convenience. It allows for a lot of info dumping, a lot of characterization, fill in, and stuff like that for people not familiar with the Eternals. I don't think it's bad or anything. It doesn't really drag it down. It's not incredibly verbose, but it's kind of a lazy technique. And the main thing here, I thought Gillen pretty much did a fantastic job. You get enough of a general idea of the Eternals, their whole history, their lore. You get a good grasp on Icarus's characterization and Sprite here. But the main thing here is that Rivik's art is wildly inconsistent, and I don't really like it. I don't know if he fell off or what. For like a short window in time, he was known as the photorealism guy who did it right. At least that seemed to be the fan impression, as opposed to other artists like Greg Land or Salvador Roca, who I wouldn't say their style is quite close to Rivik's, but kind of the general aesthetic that they're going for is similar. Like early on in Rivik's career, and I don't know exactly where he started, but like when he was doing the Ultimate Avengers stuff with Hickman, like a lot of people like that, obviously, and obviously it was a Hickman book. People were there for the writing as well, but especially on some of the covers and things like that, like people would post panels from it and be like, look at these weird ass faces and things like that. But then at some point, like I guess towards Secret Wars, like he kind of unlocked something or got a little better or had more time to work on it. And so for like a short period, and not even the full series, for like some of Secret Wars, it was like, wow, this like for like a couple of months on Reddit, Saad Rivik was the hottest artist in comics. And then people like started really paying more attention, and as more of the issues came out, and like the last 2 or 3 issues of Secret Wars was delayed and things like that, people noticed like, oh, he kind of does a lot of the same tracing, recycled panels, pulling in his own expression for Reed Richards from like 4 issues ago into this one. Literally, he does the same thing that Land and LaRocca do, and I don't see any of the realism here in this Eternals issue either. So like, obviously Matt Wilson, on the coloring angle is a great colorist and kind of sticks to the Assad Ribic aesthetic and everything. But honestly, like Assad Ribic is supposed to be a big deal. I think super underwhelming.
Yeah, I'll bring Dan in because we all read this. But yeah, I agree with you on the art. There's recycled faces in this issue and things of faces and expressions I've seen Assad Ribic do before, and I'm happy you pointed that out. Now that I know, it wasn't just me who thought that. It's verifying for you. I thought this was good, but like it's definitely trying to do a Hickman thing with the Eternals, and I was like, we just saw this. So is that the easy thing to do? Is just reboot them with text pages? Is that the new thing that's going to be a thing for like the next 3 years that people try to mimic? Because I'm not excited for that at all. But I'll stick with this because I want to see where it goes. I did try to read Gaiman's Eternals to try to get a grasp on the Eternals before this, but that was a horrible idea because I tried doing it at like 3 in the morning and I fell asleep while reading issue 1. That was a bad idea. You don't need to show us the book. It's it's overrated probably. It's also the only major Eternals thing that's happened in the last 15 years or something. Yeah, this is good but not great.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much the same sentiment that you guys shared. Yeah, the art, I don't know what to feel about it. I don't vibe with it. The only thing that kind of sold me was the last splash page. I thought that was pretty cool, seeing like Thanos, towering over our eternal character. But it's just, I don't know. I feel like this could have been done a different way that could have got more people like interested in these characters. And I don't like. It's just I'm not sure if I want to continue on. I guess I will give it a second issue, but yeah, it's just I don't know. This is not the approach I would expect them to take for such a. I mean, this is the Eternals are definitely I think more obscure than the Guardians are,
Well,
right?
they definitely are more obscure.
Yeah. So I mean, like I feel like I don't know, maybe a different take, but I don't know. We'll see.
I I'll pose this question because the minute they went to like Titan, I was like, oh, Thanos is going to show up, and then he did. You know who doesn't do anything for me after 10 years of buildup and now constant appearances throughout everything? Thanos. Like, can we put him back in the box for a while? Like, he's approached Joker level of saturation for me.
Should have had Star Fox show up.
Would have been more excited if Star Fox showed up.
Hmm. Yeah.
You want to talk about Guardians?
Yeah. Speaking of cosmic characters, Guardians of the Galaxy #10, written by our boy Al Ewing with art by Juan Cabal, colors by Federico Blee. An alliance of leaders meet to discuss Null. So again, this is kind of going off of that storyline and his plan of attack, to which Hercules and Nova are in attendance. So the Guardians then head to Spartax to confront Null, to which they have just as much success with him as the heroes on Earth do, which obviously people who've read that event know what's going on there. Null is pretty much ripping his way through the galaxy and the universe. So we then get to this interesting sequence that ends with Star-Lord shooting a giant Null dragon monster in the eye with his element gun. And the group goes off to fight the Null dragon monster in space, where Star-Lord shows up at the last second to save the day and uses a very cringe like quote saying "Sun's out, guns out," which actually made me shudder when I read it. So that's just goes to show you how bad that was. But maybe that was the intention. I don't know. Anyways, Star-Lord tells the group not to head to Earth, but instead to lure those who created this monster to him. And he believes that it is the gods of Olympus who are coming for him and his team, which obviously from the beginning of this series was who he went to confront. And I believe he trapped them in some type of like void or something. I can't remember back to that. Honestly, I know it's been only 10 issues, but having a hard time remembering, especially for all the like the hiatuses and stuff like that with this. So I don't know. I think this was
I hate to interrupt you, but which thing can't you remember?
What?
The thing. Can you not remember King in Black, or you cannot remember something from Guardians?
No, I know King in Black. No, I'm talking about
Okay.
why the gods of Olympus, like he said we can't go
Okay.
to Earth because of Null, and I'm like, okay, that makes sense. But then he's
Yeah.
like, the gods of Olympus are coming for him, and I'm like, I'm trying to think back to like what happened at the beginning of
He
the
blew them up. Peter Quill blew them up when he died.
okay. Oh, yeah, that's what I thought.
His theory is that they're going to come for his power because now he's got godlike powers because he's now a literal Star-Lord again because Ewing remixed his origins. At least that's how I read it. So it's like, oh, I can't go there because they're going to be after me.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean,
Yeah.
I think Al Ewing has handled this pretty well. I think mixing the original mythology of the character with like his like more recent like movie esque like characteristics, I think it's worked out pretty good. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, that's why I didn't have a problem with the Suns Out Guns Out line because I thought it was supposed to be played for like, oh, that's terrible.
Yeah,
So, yeah, exactly. You still enjoying this? Like, Ewing set up King and Black stuff in the background, so I
yeah,
like that they're like not directly going to Earth. They got to do other stuff, so they're not, they're helping, but in the background adjacent of the event.
that's what I'm saying. Like, it's not getting like pulled off the tracks like all other books seem to happen when events roll around. So good to see that.
Yeah, because like our next issue of Daredevil, for example, Daredevil's taking place during King and Black, so I'm interested to see how Zdarsky's going to handle that.
Yeah, I have faith in him though. We'll see.
Oh no, I do. I want to know how that book, is going to deal with it. Because
Oh, yeah.
Guardian's already been building up to it in a different way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
All right, I'll go to Thor. Thor number 11, Donny Cates, Nick Klein, Matt Wilson. Thor is obviously still trapped in the World Tree, but he finds Radakorsky, and he asks him, "Hey, can you relay a message to Asgard for me?" And he's informed that no one in Asgard is there from when Donald Blake, tried to wipe everyone out. They're hiding out in Dimension Blood with the help of Lockjaw. He kind of brought them there, and they try to gather the other Thors because Donald Blake is going to go after them, and he's trying to kill all of them. So Blake is meeting with Jane Foster, and he has a breakdown when he learns that she was also a Thor. So he's got to leave. And at the morgue, when Jane gets back, Jane finds the mangled body of Roger Norville, who was obviously killed by Donald Blake, just cut up to pieces. And it's a very grisly scene. So she knows that she's got to go stop Donald Blake now because obviously she's the Valkyrie. So we then cut back to Blake in the swamp at the end of the issue, and he comes face to face with Lockjaw and Frog Thor, or Throg. So they're going to have to fight in the next issue. So that should be pretty fun. Nick Klein and Matt Wilson, still a great art team. I'm still enjoying Donny Cates' run on Thor. So that's our second of 3 Donny Cates books on the show.
Getting It Together number 4 by a range of creative teams. Sina Grace, Omar Spahi writing, Jenny Define on art, and Sina Grace on some art as well. So in the end of the last issue, everyone just started tripping, and they come down from their high as this issue starts. Lauren, I'm pretty certain that's her name. I mean, I've been enjoying this series, but as Mike has joked when I've discussed it before, I don't really remember these characters' names somehow. I think the girl is named Lauren. She leaves her band, but the band's not breaking up. It's a amicable split, and she doesn't get back with what's his name, our other kind of main character, but they're cool with each other. And then her brother and what's his name, they move in together as friends. Obviously as friends, they're best friends, and one of them is gay, so it's not like it's romantic, obviously. And she leaves and goes to LA to try solo music. And the gay dude brother is taking a break from dating. He's kind of getting his life figured out as well. And Lauren in LA, she gets a gig opening for a show. She has to figure out some songs in very short notice for a 25-minute gig. She does it. There's some quick characters introduced for her new friends in LA. And then it just kind of ends. I don't know. It feels satisfying for her character, but everyone else is kind of sidetracked for about 2/3 of this finale. And ultimately there was most of the series. It felt like there were 3 main characters. It was, her ex, who had just broken up at the beginning of the series, and then her brother / her ex's best friend. Those 3 characters. And as the series went on and on and on, across only 4 issues, more and more the focus was shifted from the other 2 characters onto her. And as this issue ends, it's just completely like that. I don't feel that we got a satisfying resolution for the other 2 characters. I mean, we know their new status quo, and it's not like we were expecting some big revelation or development for them. She's the one who just moved to LA and is trying this, solo music thing, and they just kind of moved in together and are settling their lives down, chilling out and moving away from some of the conflict that opened this series. But I don't know, if the ending felt kind of strange, but it was a nice series overall. Just not quite what I expected. I'd still recommend reading it, but I'm not 100% certain if I'm going to add the trade to my shelf.
Generations Shattered number 1. This was teased a while back. We saw one tease of it in Detective Comics 1027. This is now being added to that slew of things that spin out of Dark Knight's death metal. I believe that word is even on the cover of this. This is Dan Jurgens, Andy Smith, and Robert Venditti on writing. And then, a bunch of artists. Ivan Reis, Fernando Passeron, Aaron Lopresti, Bernard Chang, Yannick Paquette, Kevin Nolan, Dan Jurgens, Paul Pelletier, John Romita Jr., Doug Braithwaite, Rags Morales, Mike Perkins, Emmanuel Lucchino. Every like few pages, it's a different artist. Command D is given a retrofitted Skeets that's now a gauntlet by old and dying Booster Gold, and he's like, "Hey, the world's ending. Go form a team of the world's greatest heroes throughout DC history to fight this time storm thing or whatever." So most of this is just Command D getting thrown in through different time streams, and then like picking a hero. So like he ends up in Perez and Wolfman, new Teen Titans, and he like grabs Beast Boy. He finds 50s what is it, Auto Bender, Legion of Superheroes, and he grabs Superboy. Golden Age Batman. They run into Booster Gold from the 80s, so young Booster Gold. So and then like Sinestro is a Green Lantern, and then wait, no, he doesn't grab Beast Boy. He grabs Starfire. He thinks Beast Boy is like a dog from his own time, which is like kind of funny. But yeah, this is terrible. So most of it just gets thrown into it, and then they fight against this Dominus guy, and he gets scattered around time. So somehow this spins from death metal, and then there's going to be another one of this where this was Generation Shattered, and the Generation's something else or Splintered or whatever. I don't care. This was meh and way too busy, too many artists, and I thought this was a one and done thing, but there's another one shot. I don't care. It was a waste of my time. Dan, you read this?
Yeah, this is just like you described. I mean, some of these
Just
pages are just really hard. What?
Just babbling on page?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like some of them are just hard to dissect, like what's actually going on, and yeah, and way to steal a name of a book from Marvel. Probably equally shitty book as well, but what are you gonna do?
You hate on Generation. There's like good stuff in Generations. There's like 5 good issues in Generations.
Yeah.
Okay. Vince, we spared you from reading this, but any thoughts?
I didn't read it. You guys sound very negative on it, so I'm not sure if I will catch up on it.
Don't. We're not reading the next one.
I mean, I might catch up and at least try the first issue and make sure that I actually, form my own opinion, only because I don't, obviously the original intention for this was sidetracked, and they're just, they had some ideas, and if they can, pump out comics and get that cash flow in, they'll repurpose it in some way. But however it has been repurposed in this way, I sort of like the very general premise as far as pulling from all different points of history and obscure characters. And looking at the list of artists here, which I wasn't aware of this either. It's like there's like 20 artists in this book, which both sounds terrible and also cool, especially considering who some of them are. So I think I'm definitely going to try it, and we'll see if I am as negative as you guys.
You can look at John Romita Jr.'s terrible, like 3 pages.
Yep.
Oh, he's terrible in this book. But final book from Yannick Paquette from DC. So that's sad to see. He draws Wolfman Perez Titans. Those pages look pretty cool though. All right, Dan, your boy.
Yes. So getting into a not shitty issue. Our next issue is Iron Man number 5, written by Chris Cantwell with art by Cafu and colors by Frank D'Armata. Tony checks in with Patsy to see how she is recovering before speaking with his team that he has assembled to fight Michael Korvac, which includes Gargoyle, Scarlet Spider, Misty Knight, and wait for it, Frogman. So the group discusses Korvac and their plans to stop him. Frogman is like kind of confused. He's like, are we actually going up there and stopping him? So kind of some funny banter going on there with the group. We then see Korvac and his lackeys boarding a ship, to head to Ta 2, obviously home of Galactus. Korvac mentions, however, that he must eliminate Tony before heading off to Ta 2. Korvac tries to get into Patsy's mind as we see Iron Man on a rainy rooftop brooding about the upcoming confrontation with the godlike Korvac. When he actually flies off to Patsy, since he actually used her as bait to get to Korvac. So that was the whole plot there. Once he found out where Patsy was, he kind of found her in a trance with PTSD, going back to her times with Hellstrom, Satan's son, I believe. I'm not sure. Turns out that Korvac is in the laundromat nearby and gets everyone to leave the laundromat, saying that he is a bomb. So that kind of gets Tony and him alone. And Korvac tricks Tony's team into disabling Korvac's ship, which is actually a Shi'ar ship, which I thought was kind of cool. And he actually lures all of his team into the ship and blows it up, presumably killing everyone inside. But as my co-host and I discussed before going on air, I highly doubt this team is all dead. Obviously, there's some notable characters on, not notable, maybe one notable character on this team that we don't want to see die. But then Tony shoots Michael Korvac with a strong blast, and I believe that fries his armor as Korvac's team then takes off for Ta-2. So, like, Tony's in really bad shape. From what Mike told me in his notes here, Korvac actually crippled Tony and fractured his spine. So, yeah, Tony's used to having his spine fractured and used to being dead. So, I'm sure he'll get past this and go up there and fight the good fight against Korvac. The next cover teaser that was shown in the back shows like Tony flying off like towards, I think, the system, or like you see like Earth in the background. So again, love all the Alex Ross covers, obviously, but this series continues to do well for me. I really like it. It really has some good vibes, and again, it's just really simple. There's not all this stupid bullshit jargon that, like, I feel like a lot of these like Iron Man books have had over the years. It's just Tony and Patsy going against Korvac. I mean, it's very simple, and I like it. It's still really good. So we'll see how it goes.
I'd argue it's not simple. It's a very layered, detailed work and character study, which is why
yeah.
Because it's actually about Tony for the first time in like 10 years. That's why it's been so good. Like, the whole scene where he has to wrestle with the fact that he's using Patsy as bait, and then also every time he's come up with an idea to save the world, he's been wrong, is really, really good stuff here. And he's got to wrestle with all of that. So, like, that scene where he has basically a full breakdown and he's trying to save Patsy in the street with the rain coming down, that's a really great moment. And then also, like, Cantwell's done a really good job of making Korvac really menacing, because he messes up Patsy there, possibly beyond repair. At least we're led to believe here through the series. And we've built that relationship up with Tony and Patsy where it really means something 5 issues in. And we don't know if she's going to be fine. She's already been, like, scarred on the outside, but now mentally on the inside as well. And then we also have, Korvac just completely cripple Tony, and I've seen the one things I saw were like critical of like Iron Man's armor is more powerful than that. Did you miss the part where like they've been consistently losing leading up to this? Like, his armor is already like fried from the first time they fought back in like issue 3. He's not running on like, a full, he hasn't had time to like go fix it. Like, I think people are overanalyzing with the fact that, like, yeah, the armor looks like the old 70s armor, but it's still like souped up, most technical armor he's ever had. It's just, he's been consistently losing fights for the last 3 issues. So, you have that to deal with in this. This is a really damn good issue because Korvac looks unbeatable. Like, it's like you can literally put the swelling music in the background. You're like, I don't know how you beat this guy, because now I'm afraid of him. So I really love this.
I love seeing Frogman.
I mean, I also love seeing Frogman.
Yeah, I dig the moment. The most interesting part to me was when Tony kind of gets like, he contemplates like, hey, so many people think they're God or think they're all powerful and everything, think they know all the right things, and like, are any of them ever right? What's the chance that Korvac actually knows what he's doing? And part of it is Tony reflecting because he's been in this. Usually he's been in this exact same situation as well multiple times. Usually he doesn't sound quite as nutso as Korvac, and obviously Korvac has a history of being somewhat of villainous figure. And Tony, theoretically is a good guy, but you just look at Civil War, which obviously is loosely, I'm sure that's what Tony, probably the biggest thing that he's looking at. And everything related to it and that whole era with the Illuminati and everything like that. So yeah, I like continue to like seeing some actual contemplation of the times that Tony is fucked up, times that he's been an asshole and things like that, and him actually like considering that and not either wiping away from it or leaning too far into it. Um, Big oof on the fates of almost every character in this book. Obviously, Misty Knight would be kind of a big deal. Obviously, obviously Patsy for the series in particular would be a big deal. I really hope Frogman isn't dead though, but I'd be okay with this bastardized, warped version of Ben Reilly though. And if you want to hear more about that and me bitching about this version of Ben Reilly, you can watch Saga the Clone Saga, like the last 4 episodes or something.
I forgot he's all twisted. I was just like, appreciative that he was back in like the classic suit. That's
Well, he's like not all. I don't know. They like half fixed it at some point, like deep into his solo series. But it's still. I mean, it's still not like the. It's still not quite like the Ben Reilly. Whatever. Doesn't matter.
on, Vince. Ben Reilly's still our boy at heart. You can't not love him. We did a show of 70 some episodes. We ended up liking him. So at any time he shows up, I'll clap. But I will have to say, Halcyon or Halcyon or the mutant they recruited, he's definitely going to save him there. And then also, Ben has spider sense, so I feel like they're all going to make it out okay. But yeah, this has been very fun and good. But also, like, we've seen Cardiac show up, so like, part of what I love it is that Cantwell's just like flexing his knowledge on how much he loves playing around in this universe. Like, he's now played up Frogman, Gargoyle, very minor characters, and like I said, he's pulled out Cardiac. He had Absorbing Man earlier. Like, he even had Dan. You remember he had Unicorn in like the first 2 issues. So like he's a student of the game where he loves playing around and like throw in these different characters, as many as he can get in his books, and I love that.
I mean, I think actually, I want to talk about that a little bit more. I mean, some of it is surely. I mean, I don't know that he's necessarily thinking he's flexing, but it comes off as flexing. That we're impressed that he knows this. But I think it's actually not quite as much that. Like, take a random writer. I mean, obviously, we're saying this because Cantwell is relatively new to comics and relatively new to Marvel.
Right.
But like, for example, Matthew Rosenberg or Villayala or whatever, like these people also know these obscure characters. But I think it's something where it's a combination of a lot of factors where, you never know how long your run is going to last. But at the same time, when you start issue 1, you're stuck in, for the most books, you're stuck into your first and possibly your only story, because in this trade, right for the trade era, you have to write in 5 to 6 issue chunks, for most, or at least, whether it's editorial pushing it or the writers, trending towards that, whatever, you're writing the 5 or 6 issue chunks, but you're not necessarily guaranteed more than like 5 or 12 issues. And so there's this feeling that every arc, every issue has to be like this big deal, even if the readers, when it actually comes out, are like, this single issue in isolation is not remotely a big deal. But like every arc is supposed to be a big deal. So I feel like a lot of writers feel, well, I don't know that they feel stuck, but there's like a disincentive to bring in Frogman, because if you bring in Frogman for an issue, like the way that comics are written nowadays, do you now have an arc with Frogman appearing in 5 issues, as opposed to pulling in a big character, and I think that's somewhat related to how we see a lot of these big characters used way too often. We were talking about Thanos being overused and things like that. How many, Venom. Venom is totally different nowadays, but like if the like '90s Amazing Spider-Man era was today, we'd be having a Venom arc every like 4 arcs.
Yeah.
So I think it's some of that. So I don't disagree remotely with anything you said. If anything, it's more impressive that Cantwell's getting away with this, where he is telling an actual arc, but he's not afraid to weave in some of these more obscure characters, and also, the cardiac thing. It's like, here's a little quick cardiac appearance, but it's also related to the themes of the book. It was like that whole, Cardiac was protesting healthcare, and then Tony fucks his body up to stop Cardiac, and then he's super rich, so he can, he doesn't have to worry about the things that Cardiac was mad about. So I mean, if anything, I just applaud it way more. Really like how he's kind of using the entire tapestry.
Yeah, I have to say, I think flexing was the wrong word. I couldn't think of a better word, but maybe not flexing his knowledge, but I'd say embracing and throwing in his characters in the universe would have been the better choice of words there. But Dan, before we switch to Venom, you've elected to give us the theme.
Venom, Venom, Venom.
Thank you very much. Venom number 32 from Donny Cates of Bon Coelho, our final Donny Cates book on this rundown for this week. Eddie's been trapped in the hive mind and learns that he's dead. But spoilers for Black issue 2, Eddie's dead. They couldn't revive him, but he'll probably be back because he's not fully dead here. He refuses to die, like you said, he's not dead. He comes up with the plan that, with Rex, that if he can get back to his other and free it from Null, he's got a shot. So not a bad plan, but a slim margin. And, in this hive mind of all of the symbiotes, there's still a few friendly faces inside the hive. One of them being Agent Venom himself, Flash Thompson. So Eddie, Flash, and Rex are going to team up in the next issue to try to get Eddie back to Venom, which should be pretty fun to see. I'm excited to see how this all pulls down. And I expect also, Eddie to be resurrected somehow at the end of all of this. So this was a much better issue that ties into King in Black, while the first one was really just I felt like treading water after that first issue. Not a lot happened after the first one, after King in Black number 1. But this one, it feels like it's more moving somewhere. Juggernaut.
Juggernaut number 5 by Fabian Nicias and Ron Garney. So Kane, in the beginning of this issue, telepathically catches up with his half-brother, Charles Xavier, and his on-and-off-again best friend, Black Tom, and basically fills in that this D-Cell girl he's been hanging out is probably definitely a mutant, and they need to help her. But they're like, she kind of needs to help herself. We don't really recruit people to Krakoa, even though that's like totally a thing that happens in the actual X-Men books in certain... I think there's certain books kind of devoted to that. But they're like, she has to make that decision for herself, which that's fair. So then in the present, Kane and D-Cell, they head to the private prison, which has been kind of the ongoing plotline here. But it's actually a teleportation portal. They go through the portal, and initially Kane is like, don't go with me. This is going to get hairy. I have to, I don't want you hurt. And he goes through, the guards subdue him, but of course she, breaks her word, goes in, saves him. But as they kind of are in this fight in the middle, they kind of break through the wall of the prison, and it turns out that the secret private for-profit prison is a giant helicarrier. And also, as exposition goes on, it is apparently directly connected to the U.S. Justice Department, which is a little sus. I guess it's still private. Honestly, I'd have to reread the actual, specific wording. I think it's private, but I guess, just like real private for-profit prisons, obviously the government, works alongside it. And basically, even though D-Cell went in to help Kane, they're kind of backed into a corner. And the loophole is that, since it is technically under the purview of the Justice Department, D-Cell just needs to request asylum to Krakoa as a mutant, because of the treaties that are, related to the whole new X-Men status quo. And that kind of gets them out scot-free. And I guess Juggernaut kind of somehow gets a free pass because he gets to help escort her and say goodbye. I don't know. It's kind of nonsense. But the whole time we get more of the backstory where the whole time she's sworn she isn't a mutant because, of course, she has a tragic backstory where her powers kind of unlocked as she was driving with her parents, and a big truck crashed in as she activated her powers and basically stopped her parents' car. So she feels kind of, guilty for their death. And the ending here is setting up Kane as this kind of anti-hero reformed villain who fights to make sure that other villains aren't abused, like, for example, through the justice system or by other villains. And he kind of now has this like loose team where it's Quicksand, which is, obscure character, Primus, obscure character, and Primus is like a minion of Arnim Zola, and Arnim Zola is in this splash page, but then the caption is like, new team except for the Nazi scientist, because of course Arnim Zola is a literal Nazi. And it kind of just ends there. I'm not sure if there will be a follow-up, as is kind of suggested by the end, or if maybe they'll appear in random other books. Also, the weird thing is, I swear, I'd have to look back, I swear the end of the last issue, in kind of the tease thing, it had a bunch of bees, or maybe even had Swarm himself, because there was definitely a tease for Swarm. But what ended up happening here is once he goes through the portal to the prison, like the guard, like somehow, I guess Swarm is a prisoner in the prison or in the system or whatever, and they, they experiment on and splice up some of the villains and stuff under their, that are in their system. And so the guards use some kind of like Swarm-like thing where they have bees that take down Juggernaut. But Swarm himself doesn't show up at all, which is kind of disappointing. Even though I guess this book had plenty of crazy Nazi supervillains. Overall, this series was really fun. It was fun. Ron Garney art. Again, there's some Ron Garney highlights here, like the Helicarrier is a double-page splash, which, it's a very like impressive drawing as far as the Helicarrier has lots of lines and things like that. But I don't know, it just doesn't have quite the same like very impressive nature to me as seeing, Spider-Man fight Juggernaut for a double-page splash. So this was not the highlight Garney issue. And then besides, the Juggernaut status quo coming up again, I wonder, will D-Cell ever appear again? This book was kind of Dawn of X adjacent. Now that she's on Krakoa, is that going to be picked up anywhere? Will I even be reading the book where it gets picked up? Who knows? And also, just like the whole Krakoa rules are kind of inconsistent bullshit. Like Franklin, Franklin was a mutant in X-Men Fantastic Four. Charles was like, hey, you're a mutant if you want to come chill with us. Now he's not a mutant, and suddenly, switch flips. He's not allowed on Krakoa. He can't go through the gates. And, like Kitty Pryde, who is totally a mutant, can't go through the gates, but that's a whole different thing. I won't get into that much. But then apparently, and I guess this is probably an X factor, North Star's husband lives on Krakoa, not remotely a mutant. I don't remember in the beginning of Excalibur how it's explained with Captain Britain, who is not, or I should say Brian Braddock, who is not a mutant, but his wife, his daughter, who's like barely an infant, and his sister, his sister's dead, but all of them live on Krakoa. So like he's not allowed to go live with his wife and child, his like baby child. I'm pretty sure there's a loophole for him as well. So like, why can't they just let Kang live on the island? Like, his half brother is one of their most prominent members in the entire society. He has a extensive history with all of these characters. His best friend is also one of the most prominent characters, because Black Tom has this increased status on Krakoa. So it's like, who the fuck cares? Like, just let Kang come hang out. And he's also reformed. He's not even like a problem child like a lot of the characters that they have on Krakoa. So I don't know. It's kind of silly. So if anything, kind of frustrates me. But this was fun. Juggernaut's a cool character. And now our retro book landed on me. An April 1963 book from DC. I think actually I rolled something else in our RNG, and then we have a re-roll system, which you can only use once a year, but it was the very end of the year, and we don't have it on 12-month reset. We have it on January 1 reset. So I don't remember if I kind of backed myself into a worse choice or a best choice. But this issue, Green Lantern number 20 by John Broome, Gil Kane, Murphy Anderson. I picked this because of the Flash team up. I'm not actually as down on Silver Age DC as some other people are. I think it's actually really underrated. But there weren't other super enticing choices this month. So this issue, it's about a mysterious plague in Coast City that makes people literally vanish in smoke. So insert, disease reference. Just kidding. So Green Lantern and Flash are called in to assist, and at first they're doing very basic stuff, like Flash is helping victims get to the hospital, and then Green Lantern's kind of more bullshit, where he's like somehow using his ring to try and help the sick people from getting more sick. But I love the idea of how Flash is being used here, where the hospital's like, we have this crisis, and like person with super speed would help out. I like this kind of more human aspect to using the powers. Carol Ferris is volunteering as a nurse, and Iris West is there as a reporter. And those two characters have a little convo about their different relationship dynamics to our heroes. And off the top of my head, I'm not sure if this is super consistent across Flash and Green Lantern comics, but it's basically set up as like, Carol likes Green Lantern, but she's not super into Hal Jordan. And whereas on the other side, Iris likes Barry, but isn't super into the Flash, because they both have secret identities in this era. So again, not sure if that totally, is consistent across every issue of Green Lantern and every issue of Flash, but I like that difference. And obviously, Superman fits on one side of that as well. Fits on the green. Well, actually, Superman is kind of in the middle where he kind of fits both lanes, depending on which stories you're reading. Hal suddenly gets the affliction, and despite he and Barry trying to recharge the power ring and save him, poof, he disappears. And suddenly, for like 2 pages, this book veers into actual science, or at least fluffy 1960s DC comic science. Barry pulls out an electron microscope. He's getting cell cultures on slides. But then things get derailed as he now has the ring from Hal, and it's explained explicitly that the ring can do literally anything. So he uses it to magnify the microscope even more to like 1 million times, and suddenly on his screen in perfect clarity is this little creepy dude. And so he decides, hey, this ring, which can do anything at all, let me shrink myself down to 1 million times smaller than normal. So it's like this one-off story is just like trashing the entire concept of the Atom as a unique superhero. These characters, the Micridions, they live at a microscopic scale, and they have another race held as slaves to do menial labor for them. But somehow, to keep the slaves under control, they must use human brain power. So this plague is infecting humans, making them weak, shrinking them down, and then they're harvesting energy from them. Flash meets up with Green Lantern, and they get to work, but then they're halted by the Micridians because Carol and Iris are being held hostage. But they figure it out anyways, of course, initially without using their powers, and then obviously break out their powers, save the day. And then the ending gag is, of course, the secret identity spin, where they go on a double date in their secret identities, in their real identities, and listen to their girlfriends fill them in on the story, because technically Barry and Hal were not there. I do like Gil Kane's art, but I've always felt this way, and a lot of fans and critics will talk about this, but in this era, it has some weird stiffness to it. I don't know if it's the body proportions or the posing, A lot of times people talk about in a lot of shots of faces. For some reason, Gil Kane, it'll often be like looking up at someone's face, so his nostrils on characters are always prominent. I don't know what it is, but there's just something slightly off or weird about Gil Kane, but just a tiny bit. And it's honestly, their styles aren't comparable, but the kind of like that slight off kilter vibe, I kind of think it's vaguely similar way to Steve Ditko's style, and how you would see him on Spider-Man and Doctor Strange, and even all of his other stuff. Um, I think Gil Kane becomes a little bit more palatable and a little bit more like house styling and mainstream, probably as it gets into the 70s and the early 80s, especially with some of his Marvel stuff, like when he's doing Spider-Man, but like kind of trying his hard enough to make it look similar to Romita Sr. But every time I read a Silver Age Green Lantern issue, I'm like, Gil Kane's art is just weird. But I do like it, but I don't know how to describe it.
Yeah, I think it is because the figures are so like skinny. And maybe it's because these characters been around 70, 80 years now, or close to 80 years for some of them, that we've now known them as more bulkier and more broad shouldered, your typical superhero look. So to see them so slimmed down and like very skinny, I think it's a jarring thing. I feel like if you were to sit down and like binge like 20 issues of Silver Age, Flash, Green Lantern, obviously more Green Lantern with Gil Kane art, you probably be able to grow accustomed to it and be fine with it. So no, but this is Silver Age DC fun, and this is the classic Brave and the Bold team up here by the Flash and the Green Lantern. So it was fun to see. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, if you take it for what it's worth, I thought it was a pretty good team up. Yeah, there's like I think there's like one page. It's like in the beginning of I think the third part where there's like the splash page before the third part, and like they're fighting, and like Green Lantern's arm looks like it's shifted down a little bit. Like his muscles like don't really look like anatomically correct in some ways, but obviously I'm not an artist, so I shouldn't really be judging. But yeah, I mean, obviously this is definitely not what at least what I'm accustomed to seeing with Gil Kane with like Spider-Man and stuff like that. So I don't know. I thought it was okay. I like these characters too. I was just looking at some of my like my Silver Age like Flash and Green Lantern volumes that I have to get around to reading at some point. So I'm sure these are collected in that. So
If you want a more modern take on them, there's a Mark Waid trade for literally called The Brave and the Bold. And it's a series of team ups throughout the ages with Hal and Barry, which is pretty good. And actually, I think it just got a deluxe edition too.
cool.
All right, gentlemen, picks of the week. Let's wrap this up.
I think crossover.
Crossover?
Crossover.
I gotta go Iron Man.
I'm gonna go crossover then Iron Man because the Madman reveal gets me very more hyped up. It was like a 1A 1B kind of situation this week. It was hard to choose. But guys, that's our first picks for 2021. Our most popular book last year with the most picks was Daredevil, and also our most favorite writer then an artist team because of that would have been Marco Cicchetto and Chip Zdarsky. So I'm interested to see what writer, artist, and series dominates the picks for 2021. I'll be tallying those, all at the end of the year. But just interesting to note because I went through and ran some tallies. But Daredevil was by far our favorite series last year, if you go by just picks. Mostly because of me and you, Dan, because Vince doesn't read the book. But, each pick counted as one. But that's our show this week. Stay tuned next week. We got 6 Future State books next week, so keep that in mind. But also, only 6 books from the other companies. So we'll have to see and wait. And, maybe things got changed around with the scheduling, but I don't know. That's your show for this week. It's the first one for 2021. So, all right, we've now entered the new year and hit the ground running. So until next week, we shall see you.